Welcome to week 4, Interpreting the Law. Now, this week we have 3 goals and we have 3 assignments, two papers and a discussion post. On our goals, we want to analyze the relationship between biblical and extra-biblical law codes. Now, with that, we know that Moses gives us 2 different law codes. One is the 10 Commandments, but he also gives us a broader law code, which is what you're going to be exploring in your papers. However, many have found that there are also extra-biblical, meaning law codes that were written not by the Israelites, but by other contemporary cultures that contain similar material to what we find in the Bible. And so this week I'm wanting you to really compare and contrast the Bible to an outside law code that dates relatively to the same time. Now, dating is going to be important to this assignment, so I'm going to want you to research when the Hammurabi Law Code was written and learn more about it. So it's not just to read the Hammurabi Law Code, but to research it and understand it in relationship to the law code that Moses gives us. Now, for Moses, we can actually use 2 different time frames depending upon your view of when Moses lived. Many scholars date Moses to just around or just before 1200 BC. However, other biblical scholars date Moses to 1400 BC. In either case, whichever one you pick for the time that Moses lived, I'm going to want you to compare that to the time of Hammurabi. Next, to create a hermeneutical methodology, in other words, the point of this course, how do you interpret the Bible? And how do you interpret biblical text? What is our goal? Now that we've kind of worked around the edges a little bit for interpretation, I'm wanting you to dive deeper and really, at least in your own mind, begin to understand why this course exists. What are we trying to understand when we read the Bible? And then finally, to evaluate different current scholarly arguments regarding the meaning of the text. So not just the position you've always been taught, or even not just Klein's position as a textbook, but looking outside of that, how do other scholars feel we should understand the Bible? So with assignment 4.1, which is, well, it should be fun too, law codes, in 3-ish pages, I want you to analyze the similarities and differences between the law code of Hammurabi and the laws in Exodus 21 to 23. So here we're not talking about the 10 Commandments, but the other law code that Moses puts forth in chapters 21 to 23 of Exodus. Do they share a common purpose? And I think for this assignment, the reasons why the 2 were written are going to be key to understanding their similarities and differences. And in addition, I want at least a paragraph explaining why the 2 codes may share similar laws and similar languages. Now, with any analysis, there needs to be an introduction and a conclusion, and I'm not just looking for citations of the Bible and the Hammurabi Law Code, which of course you're going to need, but in addition, I want outside research. And this paper is due Monday at midnight Central Standard Time. Next, assignment 4.2 is to really understand God's intention for Scripture. Is there one fixed meaning that God inspired the author to write about? Or are there several levels of meaning to a text, and we can't just assign the one? Different evangelical scholars and non-evangelical scholars answer that question differently. And so I want you to explore one fixed meaning versus several levels of meaning for a text. So after completing the Klein reading, write a 2 to 3 page paper answering this question. What is the goal of biblical interpretation? Is it to find the one meaning that God intended, or is it to understand that God intended several interpretations or meanings? Be sure to include a discussion of the role of the author's intent and the reader's understanding. As we dive in fact, there can be courses. In fact, I think I took a course where the entire course was attempting to understand this question. Because on the one side, we have God inspiring an author for a reason to write a text. But could God also be inspiring the author to write about something that he has no clue what he's writing? He thinks he's writing about one topic, but in fact, God intends an entirely different topic. Or the reader who reads it one day later, 10 years later, 1,000 years later, is the text really not about what God intended, but the reader understands? And so what is the relationship between author and reader? Or is there one? Should there be one? So there's lots of different ways you can go on this paper. While I do believe there is an answer, I want you to come to what you believe is your research best answer. The paper should contain an introduction and a conclusion. In addition, each paper should include engagement with both the assigned reading, biblical support, and actually not both, but three things, two of which I've mentioned here: engagement with the reading, engagement with the Bible, and then I think to do a good job on this assignment, or an excellent job, you're also going to need to engage in outside research. And then finally, we have a discussion post. After you have read the Klein reading for this week, do you believe that the biblical text has one fixed meaning or several levels of meaning? Now, you realize that assignment 2 and the discussion post are incredibly close, and that's because one is focused at me. And for me, I want a research paper. But the other is really focused on dialogue between you and other students. So after you've started your paper, I want you to write your discussion post by Friday that opens it up for discussion. And then you may find that other students have interesting opinions, and then you may want to revise your final paper before you turn it in to me. So to do a good job on the discussion post, you're going to need to complete, at a minimum, the Klein reading and postulate what your position is. I think you're also going to want to have some of your outside research completed by Friday so you can write a well-informed post. And then finally, as you're reading other people's posts, I want you to think, okay, do they have something that I don't have in my paper that I want to adopt? Or is there something that you feel is incorrect where you want to engage the other students in dialogue and help to challenge them on whether or not their position is consistent with the Bible and evangelical thought? So be sure to interact with the assigned Klein reading in addition to adding your own reflection and arguments. So those are our assignments for this week. I am going to lean heavy on whether or not you are working and engaging with Klein, whether you agree or disagree with Klein, but engaging with him. I also want you to engage in outside research and begin to really wrestle with what your position is on the whole intent to this course, and for that matter, much of Moody Biblical Studies. What is our intention in interpreting the Bible? So should be a fun week. I know there's lots of good information that you'll gain, and this week is kind of transitioning from doing assignments to thinking about theology and thinking about methodology. So have a great week. As you can see by the background, I'm no longer in Antigua. I'm back in Raleigh, and I'll be here for the next couple of weeks. Have a great day.